Welcome to How I Got Here, hosted by seasoned educator Jeremy Proper. This is a podcast of conversations with his former students discussing their journey from middle school to where they are today. Guests highlight their successes and the life lessons learned along the way. And now let's welcome the host, Jeremy Proper.
If you like and enjoy what you're hearing, please like, subscribe, hit 5 stars, whatever you can to help us out. Thank you so much. Welcome to How I Got Here with Mr. Proper. I'll be talking to former students who will tell their story of their personal journey from Mr. Proper's class, aka Club 128, to where they are now. Everyone has a different path to get to where they are now, and that path may just be the beginning to where they actually want to be. In these podcasts, I hope to tap into the journeys that my former students have taken, for them to share their experiences with my current students, and for that matter, anyone else who is interested in seeing how hard work in and out of the classroom actually pays off. First and foremost, thank you all for listening. And second of all, if you could just like and subscribe, that would be fantastic. Let's welcome today's guest, Surya Duggirala. Hey, Surya, how you doing today?
Hey, Mr. Proper, I'm doing very well. How are you doing today?
Wonderful. Now that I'm talking to you, it's so amazing to be able to reconnect with someone who was a child, probably the last time you saw them, and now they're a full-grown adult. That in my opinion is just amazing.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. I mean, I think actually the last time I saw you, I think has to have been, probably when I was graduating high school. I dropped
Right,
in
you
with
all came back. It was
yeah.
you, Andrea. Who is the kid that went to medical school? I can never remember his name.
Oh,
The Lat-
Snay? No.
a
Wait.
Latin kid,
Oh my God.
tall, kind of
A
good looking.
Latin kid, tall, good looking, went to medical school. Santiago Olachea.
That's exactly who it was. I can
Santiago
never
Olachea.
remember because all the other three that came back, didn't you all go to the same school? Didn't you all go to Cal Berkeley?
So, yeah, actually. So
Right.
Me and Andrea went to Cal. I think Shaz came as well. You remember Shaz
Oh,
Feldman?
Shaz Feldman, of course. Yeah, my
Yeah.
Ranger fan out there. Ugh.
Yeah, he went to UF. He's doing real well these days, living out in Arizona. He's killing
And
it.
and Tiffany went to Cal Berkeley.
Tiffany did come as well. You're so correct. Yeah, yeah. Tiffany came. She went to Berkeley as well. She's living in San Francisco these days, I believe.
Yep.
I know. Then I think did Preston come? Preston Wong.
Yes, Preston. Preston. What's
Yep.
he up to?
He is living in the city. Actually, I think he's getting married soon.
Oh, that's amazing. If
He's
you see him, tell him I say hi. Oh my God,
Oh,
Preston.
well,
That's
Sal
incredible.
sent his podcast. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. He's doing
we
real
definitely
well.
have to. Now that we've just mentioned all these people.
Exactly.
But
And
yeah,
then
it's hard to
finally,
believe.
there's a bureau as well, Par.
That's it. It's hard to believe though that I remember all that because you guys were very inspirational and most of you also went to FAU High, so that was a precursor to then going. I thought now it's funny because I've said this but I've never said it to any of you because I've told that story before where all of you guys came and then you were telling me about going to FAU High and then going to these wonderful universities. Did you feel like you were repeating from what you did in high school to what you did in college at some point? Because it's like, weren't you kind of cheating? Didn't you do college at FAU and then you went to Cal Berkeley?
Well, so I didn't actually go to FAU High. I know Andrea did. I know Santiago did.
Oh, it
Um,
wasn't you. Okay, I just lumped you all together. I apologize.
no, no worries. It was a pretty big hodgepodge, I think. So I think Andrea and Santiago went to FAU High. Santiago went to I think Olympic Heights or Spanish River, one of those.
Okay.
Preston for sure went to Spanish River. I went to Atlantic. Tiffany went to Atlantic, and Abiro went to Atlantic.
Oh, wow.
Um, and so I would assume I've talked to some of the FAU High folks, and they definitely do say that. But I think that like there's a pretty categorical difference when you go to college and all of a sudden you have like freedom, right? You can kind of do
Yes.
stuff that you couldn't do when you're living in your parents' house, right? Which is kind of great. Um, so yeah, I mean, I assume there definitely was a thing, but Berkeley specifically was definitely several notches higher, I think, in terms of like what was expected.
Well, without a doubt. Without a doubt. So, if you could just take a few minutes to briefly go down your story of memory lane of where you went when you were at the Don, where you went to high school, college, post college, and what you're currently doing now.
Yeah, yeah. So got to the Don, obviously in the sixth grade. I didn't like transfer in or anything, right? So that had to have been probably around 2008 because that was the Obama election. I remember that. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes. I still
yeah.
have those posters of Obama McCain up on my wall, and I remember so many kids were like, if you were pro-Obama, you were like, how come you only have McCain up there? And if you were pro-McCain, you were like, how come you only have? And I'm like, they're literally right next to each other. Like, how can you not see
Yeah.
that I have both? It was really fun. I don't know why I just remember that. That's so funny.
Selective vision, man. When people look at their tribes, they have to,
Exactly. It's so
yeah.
tribal. You're so right. Oh my God.
Right. But I remember that, man. I remember the days, the sixth graders used to hang out in the patio, not the patio, but like the that green
The
area out
courtyard. Yeah.
courtyard, yeah. And then everyone else would hang out in like the place near the cafeteria and all that jazz,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
Good memories, yeah. And so I spent 3 years out there, went to Atlantic for high school, did the IB program over there. And so yeah, I spent 4 years out there. And honestly, looking back now, it's actually a bit of a blur, I mean, you don't really pay attention to how much you've grown and how much you kind of change and learn over the course of those years until you kind of look back now, in 2025, you're like, oh my gosh, I was a dumb kid, in so many
Well, we
ways.
all were at that point because we're still immature, no matter how grown up we are. I mean, in our bodies, in our minds, we're not nearly there yet because, like, I love to tell the kids, they always think I'm a giant. And I go, look, I technically didn't stop growing till I was 21.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
most people are like, how is that possible? I go, it's not normal. Most men stop growing at 18
Mhm.
and they just can't believe it. And I said, well, and then they're like, well, how tall are your parents? And I'm like, 5'2" and 5'9". And they're like, how is that
Wow.
possible? I said, way down the stream in the Punnett Square, I had cousins that were 6'5", 6'5", 6'6", and 6'7", and I was able to somehow squeeze in there at 6'3". My mom told me that when I was really little, I don't know if they do it anymore, but they used to do some bone hand test, and they're like, your kid is going to be at minimum 6 feet tall, but we can't exactly extrapolate how much past that. So it could be 6'1", 6'2", it could be 6'9". And my mom was like, what am I supposed to do with a 6'9" child? And they're like, good
Yeah.
luck.
So that's
Luckily,
a lot of food.
that is a lot of
A
food.
lot of
Luckily, I
food.
stopped at 6'3", but still, So,
No, I mean, I hear you.
how tall are you now?
I'm 6'2", which is why when you say 6'3", it's kind of wild because like I remember you being an absolute giant, when I was in school, and now it's like,
Oh,
well,
yeah.
you're just like a little bit taller than me. It's actually really weird how
Exactly.
things pan out, right?
Well, it's a lot of it is A, you're not full grown. B, you're sitting at about 3 feet when you're sitting down. So I seem even bigger. I'm not
Yeah.
big on wearing shoes with heels, but if I'm wearing my I love my Solomon shoes. They have like a huge base because they're trail running shoes. I'm sure there's at least another 2 or 3 inches there. So it depends on the shoes. I could be 6'5", 6'6" if I'm, because I don't think about it. That's the other thing. Like now that you're a tall person, you don't really think about being a tall person, do you? It's just who
No.
you are.
No. It does a nice little balance though, because now it hides my bald spot in the back. No one can really see it. It's a real win.
Yeah, well, welcome to manhood. That's what happens, unfortunately.
Exactly. You get closer and closer to 30, you lose more and more hair. You got to go to Turkey sometime soon, get a hair transplant.
That's it. They have those in America. They're just more expensive.
I know, I know. I don't got $15,000 for that though,
I,
unfortunately.
I hear red light therapy is really good for that. You should look into a red light machine. It really
Well,
makes a difference. Yeah,
I'll take a peek at that. Yeah, thanks for the
definitely.
suggestion.
For sure. So, first off, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and telling everyone about your life experiences and where you are. So, if you could take a moment just to let everybody know, I know you said that you're about to start a new job. If you could go
Mhm.
down the career path. So, once you graduated with a degree in,
Computer science, actually, and like my college experience, I think was a little all over the place. Maybe, I think it was coming from a fairly sheltered is the wrong word, but definitely very strict household. Right, came to
yeah,
college and all of a sudden didn't really know how to kind of do well in school without having my parents really, breathing down my neck, telling me to do my homework, doing this, doing that, right? So, really, the first couple of years of college at Berkeley, I struggled pretty hard, and kind of finding out how I learned, like time management. I think was not a particularly easy thing to pick up when I was an 19 year old kid, or young
yeah.
man, I suppose.
Hmm.
So that was tough. And I think, I came into college not really knowing what I wanted to do either. I came in, like, I went to Berkeley because it was a good school, and like it was a great name brand, right?
Sure.
And I think looking back, that was a reasonable way to look at it. I don't know if I would do the same thing again. I mean, Berkeley specifically, I would definitely go to again, but like kind of the hyper focus on prestige, looking
Yeah.
back, I probably would not do even remotely, actually, because it's pretty bad for your, a kid's mental health, I think.
Oh, agreed.
Yeah, but looking back, I wanted to be like a lawyer or like a doctor or like a eye banker, but I didn't want to go into tech because my parents were in tech. My dad was in tech, and
Yeah.
I was like, I just don't really have a desire to follow my parents' footsteps. But then, I take the CS 101 course because, like, as luck would have it, on my floor in the spring of 2016 were taking it, and so I was like, well, I'll just take it as well with these
Give
kids,
it a whirl.
give it a whirl, exactly. And I kind of fell in love with it. It was one of those things that
What
I
did it for
stumbled
you?
into.
What did
Well,
it for you? What was the like, oh my gosh, I really like this. Like what was it? Was it a teacher? Was it a class? Was it just the, oh my God, I was meant to do this?
I think it was a latter. Yeah, I think I was kind of meant to do this, And it's one of those things I feel so privileged every single day to say this, right? But like, I go into CS 61A, which is Berkeley's CS 101 class, and I failed the first time. I took it a second time, right? Because
Wow.
as I was saying,
Wait,
18 to
wait, wait,
19
wait,
years
wait,
old.
wait, 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 wait. You failed something?
Oh man, I failed a lot of things. Oh my goodness. Oh, I failed so much. Yeah.
Well, thank you for saying that because most people who come on the podcast are like hesitant or neglect to go over that. And that's one of the concepts that I try to beat into the heads of these kids, that we learn more from our failures than we do for our successes. And I just am so grateful that you are willing to say that, because most people won't. Most people don't want to say, oh, this was a total crash and burn.
Well, I think you're totally right about that, right? I mean, the crash and burn, if you look at any kind of like improvement that's been made in human civilization over the past 10,000 years, it all started because of failure, right? Like,
Right.
so the
Mhm.
first guy that got burned by fire learned not to touch it ever again. And
Don't do
now
that
we're all
again.
very well aware. Yeah, exactly, right? And so, yeah, I mean, those first 2 years for me, I think college freshman, sophomore year, it was a lot of learning how to learn, right? Because
Right.
when you're in grade school, right, between kindergarten and the 12th grade, I don't know, your teachers tell you what to do, right? Your parents tell you what to do. Your peers, in so many ways, tell you what to do
Right.
because you have like
Right.
a certain amount of peer pressure to kind of do well,
Sure.
especially if you're like a kind of like a highly competitive environment like Atlantic IB was.
Oh, I could only imagine. Exactly. And then
Yeah.
you get that first report card and look to the number and to the left of your name and going, that's too high. I want a lower number.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I can't even explain to you how real that is, right? Because like I remember my between I think 10th and 11th grade or 11th and 12th. I think it was 10th and 11th grade actually, right? So
Hmm.
I took AP Calc AB in the 10th grade. And I ended up not failing, but I got a C in that class. And
Wow.
Mr. Will, Russell Williams, great guy. Really, really hope he's doing well. He did this thing where only the top like 20 kids who did well in that class were able to go into the BC AP
Right.
Calc BC class, and I
Next.
couldn't
Yeah.
get in. And so I
Right.
failed that thing. But I
Wow.
think I think one of the things I learned through that was like tenacity, right? Like I taught myself the
Sure.
course. I got a 3. I didn't get a 5 like a lot of
Right.
my peers who actually got into the course of their own kind of like inherent talent did. But
Right.
I think there's something to be said about like not taking failure as a final answer.
That's it.
It's really a very, very big important thing. And, that kind of mentality followed me through college, right? So the first 2 years, I failed multiple classes. It wasn't just the first one, right? But after a certain point, you realize like where those gaps end up being. And for me, for the most part, it actually ended up being just bad time management. It's like
Yes.
I have a test like 3 weeks from now. Shoot, the next 2 weeks are easy. I'll start cramming the
Right.
3 or 4
And it
days before
didn't
the exam
work.
starts, right? It did not work. No, not even remotely, right? Um, and so like 61A, see, to kind of bring us back to the CS thing, I ended up failing it, but the thing that really kind of like lit a real kind of like light bulb on top of my head, was like it was all puzzles, right? Like it was just a bunch of like programming problems. And I
Right.
think
Right.
if any of
Solving
your
problems.
exactly. It's like kind of it reminded me of these like Puzzle Mania books my parents would buy for me back when I was a kid,
Mm.
right?
Okay. Here we
Just like
go.
little
Now we're getting to the meat.
mazes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like little mazes, crossword puzzles, just
Right.
like dumb little nerdy things. But it
Right.
reminded me of that and I fell in love with that. And so um and it also was kind of like around the same time that the Silicon Valley scene was really ripping and
Happening.
roaring, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like, Silicon Valley, the TV show comes out around then as well. And I'm
Yep.
like,
Great show.
and being in the Bay Area, being right outside of San Francisco, seeing all this stuff. I mean, I make a joke about it, right? Because like you land at SFO today, you take the 101 north towards Berkeley, like into the
Right.
East Bay, and
Yes.
you'll see two things that really stand out. One, there are Teslas everywhere, right? As far as the eye
Yep.
can see, it's all electric vehicles. And
Yep.
two, every billboard you see is like a tech company's thing, right? And these days, maybe less sexy, right? But back in the day when I was like 18 years old,
That was
it's like,
it. Yeah.
wow, this is it, man. I've
Yeah.
made it. So that energy just kind of takes me and carries me into the next kind of few years of my life. And Berkeley is also a very entrepreneurial school. It's a very engineering
Sure.
heavy school. So there's a lot of like,
Yes.
folks that are building startups and stuff like that. You get immersed in that ecosystem. And I started working on a couple startups myself with a couple friends, and none of them ever really panned out. I didn't really have a meaningful role in any of them, but it was the vibe, for lack
Yeah.
of better words.
Okay.
It
That
was
makes
really, really
perfect
exciting.
sense. That makes
Yeah.
perfect sense. That's incredible. And it's funny because you and your explanation reminded me of like graduate school 101, that
Sure.
you're only allowed to get 2 C's in graduate school. And if you get a third one, they kick you out of the program. So, in essence, what you were doing was almost at like a graduate school level of expectation. And
Yeah.
I try to reiterate that to the kids, and they're like, wait, what? C's are failing? I go, yeah, the higher up you go in education, the harder it is. It's A's and B's, and that's it. And they just don't
Yeah.
get it. And we all have our failures and we all have our successes, but you said it perfectly. The failures are what drives us to the successes because, like you said, with the fire, hot, don't touch again. Okay, let's try this another way. But there are some people, Surya, that just bang their head against the wall, not realizing that if they take 2 steps to the right, they can just avoid the wall entirely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So life is just a big learning experience. And instead of getting mad at it, which I suck at and I get mad at everything, you have to realize that there's validity and positivity and there's something in here. You just have to unpack it to figure out what it is. It's kind of like a present. You open it
Hmm.
up, you don't know what it is until you finally see it. And yes, this may have been a negative for what happened today, but please listen to this young man who's not a young man anymore. He's a man, that he learned from this and it pushed him forward. It could have easily done the opposite. You could have easily just been like, okay, this didn't work, next, and you kept going because you realized, okay, this is a learning lesson. I was introspective. I screwed this up. I made these bad choices. Let's try not to do that again. And it drove you to be better. And obviously it worked out.
I completely agree with that. Exactly. 100%. And like I think over the past several years, I've started doing a bit of reading into philosophy, and I wouldn't call myself a religious person, but I do think that like philosophy kind of adds like a piece of flavor to my life and a kind of like guide, like kind of like a guardrail, a guide, like
Yeah,
like
sure.
a track, set of tracks, right?
Right.
And there's this one quote I really kind of like that comes from Hindu philosophy that, is basically, your right is to the work and the work alone, but never to the fruits of your labor, which basically
Wow.
kind of like, I kind of interpret to mean like, listen, your job every single day is to go and give it your best. Sometimes you'll win, sometimes you'll lose, but don't let your attachment be to the outcome. Just go out there and play, man. And Josh Bender
Yeah.
would say this, right? The soccer coach
Oh,
at the
yeah.
Don, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
you go out there, have a good time, and shoot, man. Like, if we win, we win. If we lose, we lose. But man, just give it your all. Every coach I've
Right.
ever worked with, has always said that, right? And
That's awesome.
it's the same thing. There's also one like you asked me about quotes a while ago, right? And like
Yeah.
I remember this coach I had back in high school at Atlantic on the soccer team, Mark Joseph, fantastic guy. And he basically said, talent, no, sorry, what is it? Hard work will always be talent when
Every
talent
time.
forgets to work hard.
Every time.
Hmm.
Every time. You see it all the time. You here's my perfect example. He's younger than you, but do you know that one of the former Don Estridge kids now plays on the Minnesota Timberwolves?
I did not know that. That's super cool. Wow.
Yeah, his name is Josh Minot. And
Okay.
Josh isn't too thrilled with me because when he was in my class, he was 5 foot nothing, 100 and nothing pounds. And I would constantly tell him, look, dude, unless you become 6'9", you're probably not going to become a professional basketball player. Guess what?
Yeah.
He's 6'9" now. So
No, he's not really.
yes, he is. And he play it's his second full season. He's not a starter, but I wouldn't mind making $6.5 million to come off the bench for 3 minutes a game.
Oh my God, that's a dream. It's like playing second string quarterback. Come on.
Exactly. And it's like, look, you push people. I hope what I said wasn't discouraging. I hope what I said was positive and kept him going. But you never know what people are going to turn out to be.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
never know if you're going to be the anti-motivator or the actual motivator. And he is the success story. And I'm so proud of him and I'm so glad for him. And I've even reached out and said, hey, I apologize if anything I ever said was discouraging. I was hoping to help, not hinder. And if it worked out, great. And of course, ghosted, but that's fine. So you still, like I told you earlier, you still need to say the words, whether they're
Mhm.
responded to or reciprocated doesn't matter, because I'm admitting that I was wrong. I was admitting that I was just trying to help. If it worked, it did. If it didn't, it didn't. But, congratulations to you and your success. I'm so proud of you. It's good to see. And this is
Sure.
what hard work, like I say in the beginning, in and out of the classroom pays off. But you can't take every bad thing as the world hates me and why is this so bad? And I didn't get this job and I didn't get that job. Your time will come. The problem is, while you're waiting, that time just sucks because you're just waiting and waiting, like that old play, Waiting for Godot. He's dead. He never shows up. These
Yeah.
people wind up waiting for nothing. And you can't. You just have to keep moving on. And if this doesn't work, like I tell kids all the time, look, all you need is one yes. Even if you get a million no's. I was looking at the thing on Instagram about all these people over 40, like Colonel Sanders, like the guy from Nike, and all these people who made it after 40. And they were told no like 10,000 times. They didn't give up.
Yeah.
They just kept going. This is my
Yeah.
idea. It's going to happen. And when you have that drive, that stick to itiveness, come hell or high water, it's going to happen. So
Hmm.
when you talk about teachers, you had mentioned a bunch of teachers. Was there one that maybe stands out where you were like, okay, there's the light bulb is on, and this is the teacher that's cranking up the wattage. Like we're not on dimmer, we're all the way full blast. Like you had that aha moment that a teacher was just doing their thing, and you were just honed in. Like maybe the thing that got you or directed you towards engineering, or maybe something else. Maybe it was math, or was there that teacher that just really opened it for you, and you're like, wow, I just enjoy learning, and I enjoy this.
There was, yeah. I mean, I think we talked about a few, right? Like
Hmm.
earlier.
Yeah.
I think the low hanging fruit would obviously be you proper, right? Like I
Oh,
think
thank you. Here, let me pay you
it's
that $20 on Venmo right now. Boop, 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 boop.
well, cheers, cheers. That's why I said it. I wanted now I can buy my lunch for today, a little Chipotle.
Yeah.
But I think using you for this example would be kind of like a pander. So I'm actually not going to use you here. Even though I will, I think we've talked about it before, but I think like your class was a extremely formative, I think, kind of like endeavor. A very formative
Thank you.
experience for me. But I would say that outside of you, outside of like middle school in general, I would have said my high school history teacher actually probably made the biggest impact on me. Like
Nice.
Dr. Gonzalez. Yeah, Dr. Gonzalez at Atlantic. Was my. I think he taught me both AP World and he also taught anthropology, like IB anthropology. Which is
Nice.
really really cool. But the thing about him, I think, is that he would weave in a lot of current events, a lot of politics. And
Yeah.
really. Made a pretty lasting impact on me in a political and current events kind of world. Like he was a very passionate speaker and a very good storyteller,
Yeah.
and through that he was able to kind of capture my imagination, kind of tell me like teach me that like we can actually aspire to more, like there is a
Sure.
world that we live in today that we can
Make a
make
better
better.
place. Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and I don't think that really landed when I was like a 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old kid. That didn't really make much of a difference, and I was
Right.
like, what the hell am I going to do, sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to
Exactly.
say that, but
No, that's okay.
you know but yeah, I would say that Dr. G was definitely like
Nice.
one of the most formative teachers that I've had.
That's so awesome. It's good to know. And I have a hard time with compliments, and it's like I don't do this podcast so the former kids, the you, can come on and pat me on the back. But of course, it is nice to hear because you spend 180 days with people and you get to know them. And I think as we discussed earlier, your formative years, middle school is when you really start to notice the teachers. Like you may
Mhm.
have liked Mrs. So and So back in elementary school, but by eighth grade, now all of a sudden you're really thinking. You're becoming like a little adult person. You're starting to understand what it is you have to do, how to behave, how to interact, how to get what you want from people, teachers, and you're starting to mold the person that you are. And those people make a huge difference in our lives, and it's important.
Yeah, absolutely, completely agree. I mean, we would be nowhere without our teachers, right? I mean, like,
For
I think like
sure.
even more than our parents, I think we spend more time with our teachers
Yes.
than anyone
Yes, we
else.
do. 55 minutes an hour, 5 days a week, for sure.
Hmm.
Yes. Sometimes you don't see your parents a whole weekend that much because then it's off to soccer and then it's off to this and
Yeah,
that, and mom and dad are doing things and whatnot. Wow.
sure.
So you always have been a very intelligent person, and I love to ask this question because I know what my answer is, and it's an emphatic no. But if you could turn back time and tell your eighth grade self some advice, what would it be? And my follow up to that is, would you have listened? Like if a 28-year-old Surya goes back to 14-year-old Surya, is he like, yeah, I don't know who this is, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great, wow, that's a fantastic question. I would say that like the number one thing I would have said is to, I guess, not be quite as beholden to what should be, you know? I mean,
Yep,
as a kid, you kind of have, and your parents kind of play a role in this as well. Your peers play a role, your teachers play a role in this, I think, right? Where,
sure.
especially in the kind of environment that the Don created, that Atlanta created, where you're surrounded by these incredibly intelligent folks everywhere, and they're all aspirational, I think, right? And
Right.
so I would say like maybe let go of like your attachment to like going to Harvard, right? You don't need to go to
Mm,
Harvard. You don't got to go to Stanford. You don't got to go to Berkeley. You don't have to.
right.
What you should do is, and perhaps it's just like the privilege of hindsight, the privilege of actually having a day job that pays rent, But
Yes.
I really would say that like, follow your fashion, follow your passions, not your fashions. That too, perhaps, but
Could
follow
be
your
your
passions.
fashion is your passion. I have a girl,
Um,
Sarah Bailey, who lives in France, and she works doing high design for fashion companies. She was doing something at the Louvre with Porsche and Birkenstock, the weirdest mashup
that's
I've ever
crazy.
seen. And I'm like, who do you work for? Like, what do you do? It's so interesting.
Doesn't this person have does she have an older sister too from my
Yes,
year?
she does. Yes, she
Yep,
does.
yep.
From your year.
Emily Bailey, you remember? Yeah,
Emily.
Emily.
Yep,
Yep,
Emily.
I remember.
Great, great family. They are amazing. Emily's
Oh,
bouncing around Germany right now. It's so funny how all these
no
people come
way.
up and then we will talk about it and then they'll hear it on the podcast and like, oh my God. So
Yeah,
what would you say is your most challenging educational experience and how did you overcome that challenge?
I have to say those first 2 years of college,
Yeah.
really honest to goodness, like I think being someone in like grade school that was very, very good at what they did, not the best, but certainly competent,
Yeah. High end.
and
Right, for sure.
yeah, sure. And then going to college and getting absolutely destroyed, not only by the people who were way smarter than me, but also by myself, because I didn't do
Right.
myself any favors there either.
No.
So had to have been that.
Okay. And then how did it make you a better student or better person? You talked about it earlier because you had to hunker down, but like, was this really an epiphany moment where the angels came down? Ah, and you're like, oh my God, I'm floundering. I need to get my act together.
Yeah, man. I mean, I would say that really what kind of happened was like, throughout my youth, I think there was always a general up and to the right movement, and not in like any like, I'm not trying to like it's a pretty like kind of like it was kind of like evident, that it was like generally up and to the right. And I kind of thought that was ordained, it's like, the old
Yeah,
adage goes that like
right.
excuse me, the old adage kind of goes like, once you make it to a really good university, like you're kind of just
You're
like you're
done. Yeah,
set, you're
yeah,
done.
yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's the kind of like attitude I carried in. And boy, those first 2 years taught me that was absolutely not the case. There's that old Al Pacino speech. What is it? Any given Sunday?
Yes,
Inch
yes.
by inch, inch by inch. And that was kind of the attitude that I had taken on after failing those first 2 years. Like I wasn't on academic probation, but I was about as close to it as you could believe.
Yep. It's funny you say any given Sunday because that is the only movie that I would have had the opportunity to participate in. One of my students,
No,
you've seen the movie, obviously, you know it well.
sure.
Do you know the kid who is like the water boy or the football carrier kid?
Yeah, I do remember.
I taught him. He was in my class.
No,
And
really?
they filmed that in Miami and this kid missed so much school because of filming this movie. His mom felt so bad and said, "Mr. Proper, I've become really good friends with, the second director." Meanwhile, like I don't know anything about movies, so I'm just going, "Uh-huh, I don't know what the hell she's talking about." And
Sure.
she's like, "I'd really like to give you a thank you." And I spoke to the second unit director and he said, if you wanted to miss a day of school, that you could come on set and we could make you either a reporter or we could make you a cameraman. And, if you'd really like to do that. And I was like, well, how old was I then? I was like in my late 20s, maybe 30. And I was
Oh
like, I was,
man.
no, actually, it was my first year. So I had just started. So it was, yeah, I was 28. And I was like, oh, I really appreciate it, but no. And of course, now I'm like kicking myself, like I got the free opportunity to actually be in a movie, and you brought that exact one up. And of course, every time it comes on, I'm like, oh, could have been in that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you never know how things are connected. And it's the same thing. You got to be nice to people because you don't know how or when it's going to affect you. You know, like we talked earlier, one of my former students became the youngest in my class at 1,300-hour yoga instructor. And they wrote me the nicest note one teacher appreciation day to make sure that I knew it. And that's what it's all about. You know, you want to
Hmm.
be there to help the kids move along, get to their dreams. And, you know, occasionally you're going to step on a dream or two, unbeknownst to you. But I've gotten to the point where it's like, look, if you're 28 years old and you're Surya and you still hate Mr. Proper because of something he said or did, it's probably because I caught you doing something you shouldn't have been doing in the first place. And you were
Sure.
used to getting away with it. And I caught you. And it's time to grow up and you know, leave it alone. Things happen, move on. But that's how I
Definitely.
try to look at it. You know, and if you're still mad at something that happened to you 14 years ago, you really need to go see someone and talk that through. So,
I completely agree. You know, I mean, I think as I get older, I realize a lot of folks who have not actually let go of like a lot of the stuff that happened in their childhood. You know, and some folks it's obviously very big, and like you can't really blame them for that, right? But I think that like a lot of people kind of bring in like trauma or kind of pain from their childhoods, like with their families, or
right,
like
right.
teachers, friends. It's like to your point, there is not to minimize any of that stuff, right? But more
No,
so like the only person that's being harmed by this at this point is yourself, is you.
exactly.
And so
Right.
perhaps it would behoove you actually just to like forgive, if not forget, forgive
Right,
and
right. No
and
one wants to
just,
forget, but just forgive and move on. And it's like,
yeah.
it doesn't always work. You know, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And,
Hmm.
you know, like I literally was told my senior year, I had taken 2 years of psychology. And if you took the second year of Psych 2, at the end in senior year, the professor teacher would come in and have a one-on-one conference with each of the kids.
Hmm.
Everybody goes in and they're like, "Oh God, Mister So and So was so cool, wishing me da 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 da." I go in there, and the first thing the dude says to me is, "Do you really think you need to go to college?" And I look at him and I'm like, "Why are you saying this? Like, I'm
Wow.
literally 3 days from graduating, and you think I should not go to college?" Now, don't get me wrong, it's the psychology teacher. So to
Hmm.
this day, I don't know if he was trying to use psychology on me, if he was trying to be the person. I never really delved back into it. I was mad at the time and used a
Hmm.
couple of choice words I probably shouldn't have, but I never really looked back on it and go, I'm going to prove, I don't even remember the guy's name. I'm going to prove Mr. Johnson, I just made that up. I'm going
Sure.
to prove him wrong. I was just kind of like, yeah. And I would think about it from time to time and I'd talk about it in class from time to time, but I wouldn't say it was a motivator. If anything, it was just something that annoyed the crap out of me of like, I even said to him, why would you say that? Like, even
Yeah.
if that's what you believe, like, I'm 2 days from graduation and you're telling me I've been in your class for 2 years for two separate classes, and now you know me because you're a psych professor. Like, come on. But
You got to give him the
you
Dale
never
Carnegie book.
exactly. It's just so funny because you never know what people's intentions are, but you just kind of have to take it. But at 18 years old, full of all kinds of piss and vinegar, I was like, screw this guy, whatever. But
Yeah.
I, I, I think about it as, yeah, I was able to prove you wrong. And people are like, did you think about? Not really. Like, it wasn't a driving force for me. But I
Hmm.
will say though, when I did finally graduate from college and graduate school, I took a moment to think and go, how'd that work out for you there, buddy? So
Yeah. Well, I think it's kind of the emotion that kind of creates in us, right? The individual who kind of says something like that kind of eventually fades into darkness, or like fades away.
right.
But like it is that emotion that you feel at the time that kind of forces you to be like, yo, I don't know. This is not how I want to feel anymore. I want to kind of
Right. It's
like,
put up or shut up time is basically what it is.
yeah,
And
exactly.
I was not blessed with the intellectual capacity of Surya where things just stick in his brain forever. I was a different kind of person. I had to work hard and really put my nose to the grindstone and, still with some mediocrity. And it's just, everybody does what everybody does. And you just come out the other end better for it. There are people who,
Hmm.
like we said, that get in your way to be difficult. My mom had a story like this. Okay, so my mom has her PhD. And when she was doing it, after she was done, she had two readers. And one of the readers was the department chair, and he loved my mom. And the other one was this crotchety old lady who did not. And every time my mom worked on this paper for 4 years, I think. Imagine working on one paper for 4 years.
It's crazy.
And my mom calls me up. She's all upset. And she's like, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, all right, this is what you can do. I'm just going to ask you this question. Is it the best it's ever going to be? And she goes, I can't make it any better. I said, okay, fine. What you're going to do is you're going to make 2 copies. You're going to give one to the dean and you're going to give one to the other reader and say, I am done. And if you don't accept this for what it is, then I guess I'm not a PhD candidate because I cannot make this any better. And she was like, that's amazing advice. Where did you get that from? And my answer, you, Mom, you told me that when I was in college. And she's like, you really do listen to me. I go, I know it's hard to believe, but yes, I do. And so it's so wild that I was able to recycle something that my mom helped me through in a bad time. And then I was able to help her. And yes, of course, she got her PhD and now she is the doctor proper in the house. And
I love that.
yeah. And it's like, look, no one has it easy. And if they tell you they do, they're lying. No, they don't want, most people don't want to tell you how hard they have it or had it, because that's showing weakness. That's showing that they weren't always successful. I think it's the better person who does, because we all have it. And that's why I so appreciate you coming on and telling me how you failed, how success wasn't always there. And then you turned it around. You could have just been like, okay, maybe I'm not good at this. Maybe I should just be something else, And you said, no, if I really turn up the volume, put in the effort, do what I have to do, come hell or high water, I'm going to become a success. And darn it, you did. And that's what's so amazing, that your intestinal fortitude did not allow you to give up. I mean, I'm sure that's a lot of your family background and your upbringing, and especially having loving parents who care about you, who want you to be successful and are going to help you any way possible. They weren't just kind of like, well, this is your sinking ship. Good luck.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you saying that. I think you're totally right. I'm very privileged in that sense, right? Like, I think I come from a loving family. I've always had food in my belly, right? I have a roof over my head. I have all these things.
Exactly.
I'm so grateful for it, and many people don't have that, right? And so, like, I think I kind of started on third base in so many ways, right?
Yes,
Um,
you did, but you didn't take that lightly, dude. You could have been
no,
like,
no,
I got my world handed to me. What do I need to work hard for? I'll just live off my parents for the rest of my life.
yeah.
There are a lot of people who feel that way, like, I'm entitled. Why should I have to do it?
Well,
Why?
I think
Because your parents wouldn't let you do that.
real. No, it's so real. And once you kind of like get those training wheels taken off, I think in the vein of like failure and kind of learning from failure, I think that it generally you can't really go wrong, I don't think, with the warrior mentality, right? The idea to turn and face, whatever problems you have in your life at any given moment, right? Because like
Yeah,
if you don't do that, they never get solved. You push them to the back of your mind. You put them in a closet somewhere, and you forget about it. But it's not like they disappear. They stay, right? These
sure.
problems, these trials, these tribulations, they if you hide from them, you never actually get strong. You never get better at it.
No, of course.
But if you turn and face, like, dude, you'll get punched in the face 12 times in a row, but on the 13th time, like lucky
Right.
13, man, you pick yourself up and you succeed. At which point, your old teacher reaches out to you and you do a podcast with them and you get called
Thank you.
really smart, even though in reality, I just what I always say is like, I don't pick things up particularly fast. I take my sweet time learning most things.
Hmm.
Once I learn it, I won't forget it. But
Right.
it takes me a lot to
Yeah,
actually
but
get there in
you
the first
know that
place.
about yourself. You understand how it works for your
Yeah.
brain. A lot of people just fight it. You're like, look, I want to learn it. It may take me longer. I will say the only thing I've been that way throughout the majority of my adult life is trying to learn and play guitar. It's the one
Yeah.
thing I can honestly say that I've stuck with since I was 18. I'm obviously not a professional musician. I have friends who are, but I am not. I just do it for fun. And it's just something for my own enjoyment. And I like to do it. And it just is fun. I've seen the maturation process. I've seen it get better. I've seen all this stuff. But you're an anomaly, dude. You're an enigma. Most people will not stick with it that 13th time. Most people will be like, I did this 10 times and it still isn't working. I got to move on to something else. That says a lot about the kind of person that you are, that you just aren't willing to give up. You're like, okay, that didn't work. Let me try this. That didn't work. Let me try that. That didn't work. Let me try the other thing. And you just kept going. And that drive is what has made you the success that you are and the success that you will be in the future. And that's what I'm so glad you're able to convey to these kids, that it wasn't the easy ride. It wasn't always the straight A. I wasn't Midas with my grades and everything I touched was A's. And the fact that you're willing to come on to a tiny little rinky-dink podcast, open yourself up and be, almost scrutinized, and you're okay with that, just says what kind of great man you have grown into and what a wonderful person you are. And it's the fact that you're willing to come on and say that to a bunch of teenage kids says a lot, because they need to hear this from you. Were them 14 years ago. That was you sitting in the class going, what is this old man talking about today? And now look at you. You're a success. You're an engineer. You went to an amazing school. I mean, I believe Tiffany and I looked it up that it's the third best engineering school in the country. I mean, that's insane. It's like MIT, Stanford, and Cal Berkeley. Like, wow,
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. You accomplished something that no matter what happens to Surya for the rest of his life, that can never be taken away from you. You are a graduate of Cal Berkeley School of Engineering, and no one, no matter what happens to you, can ever take that away. And that in itself has to be an amazing accomplishment and feeling, because I've never even been to the campus, much less went to school there. And that is just an incredible feat to be able to say.
Well, shoot, Mr. Proper, that means so much. I really, really appreciate it. I mean, that's yeah. I guess I really thought about it like that. I think it's a fair point. It was all really
It's
great up
the
until you said
age.
14 years ago. Yeah,
Yeah, it's the age. It's with age
yeah,
comes more wisdom, and you see things in a different way. Yeah, no, it's so important to let the people that you care about, that are important to you, that have made a difference in your life, that want to come on here. And it's so wild how my words all of a sudden humble people. Like, either A, they're not used to hearing that, or A, they did, or B, excuse me, I don't know the alphabet, or B, they weren't expecting those words to come from me. And it's like, look, when you're an eighth grade punk in my class, I can't be like, I love you, you're great and
yeah.
amazing, and you're so smart, because you're not going to do anything. You're going to be like, oh, okay,
No,
this is easy. But now that I see you all in adulthood and whatever, it's so much easier to say, you tell people these things, and it's so crazy because now I just keep getting the same reactions, and it's pretty easy. I'm so fortunate that all of you kids allow me to follow you on social and see your maturation and your growth, and, love to watch everybody in their work world, in their relationship world, getting married, having kids. And it's just so amazing that people still want me. 180 days is all we did, and now I'm still part of your life 14 years later. And that to me is the greatest thank you I could ever thought for a 30-year teaching career. That here these students want me connected in their lives, seeing what they're doing, commenting on my things, doing my podcast. There's no better thank you. At this job, as everyone knows, pay isn't it. But the fact that,
yeah.
kids like you turn into great adults, and they want to, come back and give, back to me. And it's phenomenal, and tell their story. And it's funny because the students always ask, how do you get these kids to do this? And I'm like, I just ask, and they say yes. And who doesn't like to talk about themselves, and who doesn't like to tell about their experiences? I go,
Yeah.
this is my job. I tell you about my life and my experiences on the daily. Now I'm giving the current you 14 years in the future the opportunity to do it. Wouldn't you
Of
want to? And
course.
I want to know, and the kids in the class want to know, because that's all they ever want to hear. Oh, has anyone ever been successful? Has anyone ever this and anyone that? I'm like, well, Don Estridge is now 20 years old. So some of the kids have become very
Wow.
successful, and, it's hard to believe,
That's
and
crazy.
it really is. It's really crazy, and it's just so great that people want to come back, tell their story, talk about, I love to hear like their impressions. Like, I totally missed it because I don't really think about it, but like, the 20th anniversary to like 9/11, or the 25th anniversary to 9/11,
Hmm.
I was like, man, I should contact all of the kids that were actually in my classroom the moment that I turned on the television. Because
Ah,
I've spoken to many of them, and I was like, what was your 12-year-old version? I was a seventh grade teacher at that time, of me when you saw me do that. How did I behave? Was I caring? Was I what you needed at the time? Or and they were like, no, you were just very stoic and very like, all right, I have something to show you. It's going to change your life forever. If it can't handle it, you can leave. And I got that from every kid that I spoke to. I'd love to get as many kids who are in that class, that actual period, probably first period at 9 o'clock in the morning when I turned it on, and they were all like, "No, you handled it great." And at that point, I was like 31. I was a young pup
Yeah.
myself. I was still, second or third year teacher and, trying to understand the world. And that's it. And then I just totally stopped my class for like 2 weeks. And we just talked about our feelings and we made posters and everybody told experiences about family, friends. One kid was like, "Yeah, my uncle was supposed to work at Windows on the World. It was his job. He was a busboy and his
Wow.
alarm didn't go off. His life was saved because he missed his alarm." You know, Another kid, my aunt was supposed to be on the Boston flight. She left her ticket at home and thought it would be faster to go home and get the ticket than it would be to just get one issued at the counter. She got there and the plane took off, and that unfortunately was one of the ones that crashed. And you know,
That's
it's
so
like,
many stories like that.
yeah, it's just crazy, and but they remember that stuff, and they're well
Yeah.
into their 30s now, and they remember that stuff, and it's like those are the moments that make you feel good about a teacher, that you were there for them, you were able to
Totally.
do that. But then that happened to me again with the when the unfortunate MSD shooting happened, and I just did the same thing. I
Oh
stopped.
my gosh, you're so right. Yeah, that was right down the road, huh?
Yep,
In
I stopped
what is it? In
teaching.
Weston.
Yeah, Weston, exactly right. I stopped teaching. I made the kids. I basically put all their names in a hat with their when remember CPS, when we had the CPS numbers,
Sure.
and I picked them out and I just randomly put two people together. And I said, I don't care if you say I like the shoes that you're wearing. Say it. Write a letter to this person and say at least one nice thing.
Hmm.
And they were
Hmm.
all, what? I go, look, you guys, some of them knew some of the kids that didn't make it because they went to camp with them and they were all upset. And I was like, write a nice letter. So they all leave and all of a sudden they're like happy and everyone else is distraught. And one of the assistant principals or principal stops them and is like, what's the matter with you? Why are you happy? And they're like, oh, Mr. Proper gave us the best lesson ever. He made us write a letter to each other. And they were just like, Proper, where'd you come up with that? And I was like, it's been in the bag of tricks for a long time. It's hopefully
Yeah.
something that doesn't have to be done on the reg, but it worked. That's the thing. I think
I mean, I feel
what,
like a lot of these kids don't really like when you're young. I don't think you really understand the power of community, But as I get older, I really think it's like the fundamentals of it all, especially kind of like after the pandemic and being locked in in California at least, being locked in your
yep.
house for 2 years straight, right? Like
Yeah.
once you go back and you meet people in real life face to face, right? Like it's so much more difficult to have bad opinions about people, to
Yeah.
have perpetual
Sure.
anger in your heart, like
Right. Well, you grow up.
seeing folks face
You
exactly.
you
Yeah.
grow up and remember, when you're 14, your sphere is really small. And
Hmm.
then as you get older, the sphere gets bigger. You go to college, you meet people from all around the world. You're
Yeah.
dating, you're meeting these people, you're going out, you're doing adult things in bars and all these adult things that you can't do as a kid. And now you have a good
Hmm.
job and you're making money and I'm not relying on mom and dad and I can make my own decisions. And now you're like, yeah, maybe I was the one who was wrong back in middle school. It wasn't the teacher who was actually trying to help me. But that's what happens. It's maturity.
It
So,
is. It is.
so how were you able to unwind when you were doing all of these difficult tasks? What is the Surya thing? I know you used to play soccer, but was there something else or was that it? Did you sports or what was it that you're like, all right, I need to just unwind from all this educational overload?
It was soccer, I think. Yeah,
Nice.
it has always been soccer. I think more recently it's changed. Actually, these days I'm a little washed, and so I ride bikes and I box and I sail. But those are
Nice.
more like weekend
Right.
activities. But
Yeah.
soccer, when I was in college, high school, even middle school, honestly, throughout up until maybe a couple years ago, really. I think getting a ball and just kicking it against a wall, or like going and playing pickup with a bunch of friends,
Yeah,
it's a good way to just kind of like get away from all of it, right? Like
for sure.
I think when I'm playing ball, I feel like I kind of enter this flow state where like I know exactly what has to be done on the field. Nothing else really from the outside of like this like kind of whatever it is, like what 20 by 100 or whatever.
Right, right, right. Yes.
Outside of the pitch, it doesn't register, and that was always a really nice thing, and once you kind of get back home, you shower, you drink some water, you kind of have some dinner or whatever, right? And then it's like, well, your body is so much more relaxed because that exercise is kind of like I don't know. It's a lot of dopamine or serotonin or whatever is in your system
Right.
after a workout, you know, and that just feels great. The endorphins are fantastic.
For sure. Well, that's awesome. So
Yeah.
I can't believe I got soccer. That's amazing. So what did you learn about Don Estridge as a school after you left its hallowed halls? Was there
Oh,
something that high school showed you that you're like, oh my God, I learned that at the Don?
well, I think you meant more about the history of the Don. I was like, I didn't realize how big of an IBM kind of workshop it was back in the day
Oh,
until
huge.
like after I graduated. Yeah.
Secret facility. Yes, yes. Well, that's
Yeah.
one, that's for sure. So was there something that you like went to high school and you were grateful that the Don taught you that you're like, oh, okay, this I already know how to do this. I'm good. I'm ahead of the game.
You know what? I want to say it has to be with the idea like learning to learn once again, right? Like
Ah,
the Don really did have a very high bar for what you had to do. You know, like the teachers, you know, whether it was PE, you know, with like you know, I think Mr. Pokla, Coach Pokla was
yep.
the coach, you know. I
Mm-hmm.
remember still remember his kids very fondly, you know, Royce,
Yep.
Landon,
Oh
these
yeah.
kids, yeah.
All successful.
Um,
Yes.
oh yeah, absolute ballers, you know. And so like having folks like whether it be PE or whether it be social studies, whether it be math with Sorgan, you know, like
Yeah,
there was a very there were high expectations on you, you know. You had to actually deliver. And
for
I feel
sure.
so grateful for that, right? Because I feel like, you know, like any sport, like any endeavor that you do, you know, I think being surrounded by the best of the best of the best will always force you to be a better version of yourself, right? As opposed to phoning it in.
Yeah.
Um,
Great
and I
point.
think by virtue, right? Yeah. And so by virtue of that, you know, I think getting to Atlantic was not nearly as difficult of a transition as it could have been,
For sure.
you know. And
Hmm.
I think like good learning hygiene, right? I mean, doing your
Yeah.
homework, doing Newsweek. I don't know if you still
Right.
do the whole Newsweek thing these days with your kids, but
Unfortunately, no. No. I wish I
no.
did.
Oh,
I miss it. I miss it very much so. The
valid.
kids are like, "What's that?" I'll tell you in class.
Oh yeah. It was a great time, you know. I think it was just like you know what, Mr. Proper, I think it was really like cultivating a love of learning, right? It was
Yeah.
when you're in middle school and you have a lot of smart kids next to you, you got a lot of teachers who really care about what they do, you know. You have this kind of like environment where you can pick up knowledge for fun as opposed to doing it for a resume bullet point like you would in high school, you know.
Nice.
Um, and I
So
think that that was really great.
it goes back to another question that I actually didn't ask you. So, where did your inspiration for learning originate? Was it a specific place? Because I've had a lot of kids whose parents are from India tell me a specific place where the learning just happened. Did that happen
Yeah.
to you?
It did, but maybe not in the way that you might be assuming. So throughout grade school, I did it for the resume bullet point, which kind of goes back to what I was saying, you know,
Yeah.
as like a little while ago when you asked me what I would tell a younger version of myself, you know, would I have listened? Probably not to your point, right? Um, as a kid, you know, I did everything because my parents told me to, or because I wanted to go to Harvard, or whatever the
Right,
heck,
right.
right? I think when that switch really flipped, it was sort of bipartite. I think, you know, there's two parts to
Hmm.
it.
Yeah.
First part was in CS 61A, where I started doing
Right.
something because I really enjoy it, right? The CS 101 class, because I was
Hmm.
like, wow, I'm gonna fail this course anyways, but shoot, I
Gonna give
really
it a
love it.
try.
I'm gonna give it a go again, the second time around, right?
Right.
And then the second time actually was a course that I did not fail, but absolutely got destroyed by in college was discrete mathematics CS 70, right? Computer science
Wow.
70,
That
destroyed
sounds
by the
hard, and I don't
course.
even know what it is.
Well, discrete mathematics is basically just like, you know, you have, I actually, I'm not going to go into it because there are folks that are way better than me at this that will laugh at my explanation, right? But long story short, instead of continuous mathematics, it's discrete mathematics, right? So you have like
Hmm.
one, two, three. You know what? Don't just like dash this entire thing because I actually don't think I'm giving you the right answers at all.
No
The long
worries.
story short of it, right? The short and skinny of it, right, is
Hmm.
basically that you have to do a lot of proofs, like mathematical proofs, right?
Right.
And up until that point, I had always done like rote memorization. You know, here's 200 problems, go solve them, right?
Right. Right. Right.
And I had always associated math with this like absolute nightmarish kind of like, you know, just like trudge, this death march through like
Right.
your like Pearson textbook, you know? And then
Too much
CS70
work.
all of a sudden, too much work, you know, for what? I don't know. I'm not going to use this stuff in my day-to-day at all, you know, am I? But then, you know, with CS70, you had all these like really complex formulas and all these like really cool things that you would use at one point or another in
Right.
like prior kind of like rote memorization classes, right? But now you're actually understanding why they work the way they do, how they work, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was an unlock in my mind because all of a sudden, for the first time in my life, I'm not doing math to like for the sake of math. I mean, I guess you kind of are, right? But like
Right.
now you're doing math in a way that kind of explains why you're doing things in the way that you're doing them, you know? And
Sure.
that was like, I don't know, I keep going back to the idea of learning to learn. And
Yeah.
that was kind of like the connection between learning to learn and why these things are being learned in the first place.
Okay. So that's a really good explanation of that. So as I end all these podcasts, I ask one question. You had touched on it where you
Hmm.
knew that this was a secret IBM facility. So my
Hmm.
question as I end every podcast is the same. Do you remember who Don Estridge was as a person and what he did at that building that you went to school?
Ooh. The answer is no, but I can guess, right? I think he was a
Yeah.
I think he was a chief researcher out there, I believe, right? He had that there's
Yes.
a building that was like to the far when you're facing the school, there's a building to the far right hand side, right? That was
Yes.
the place you go for code
Safe
reds as
schools.
well as like I think I'm
Safe
sorry?
schools. Safe
Yep,
schools.
exactly. So wasn't he a chief research scientist or something like that over there?
Without him, you wouldn't have a job.
No way.
He
Really?
Don Estridge invented the personal computer. And we actually have his personal computer that he used at IBM, not the one he invented, but the one that he used. They donated it to the school. But yeah, he is given the moniker of being the father of the personal computer.
Dude, wow. Bill
Yep,
Gates could never.
that's why the school is so important, and we wouldn't have engineers like yourself without the personal computer. So without
Yeah.
him, no job for you. You would have been doing something else. Well,
No, not at all.
on behalf of the How I Got Here podcast, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and talk about your tribe's tribulations and your ups, your downs, your all arounds, and being so open and transparent and honest. It is such a joy to reconnect with you and listen to your story because I know in the future it's just going to keep going. But where we are right now is a pretty amazing place. And again, thank you so much.
Well, shoot, Mr. Prober, thank you for having me. It's been such a great time to reconnect as well, and I've had a great time today.
Thank you for listening to How I Got Here podcast with Mr. Proper. Music provided by Miss Mata. Thank you to Patty Fernandez for the introduction. Thank you to Seth Proper for logistics and behind the scenes production. Join us next time for another episode of How I Got Here and more stories of former students and their journey.